Well, hello, I'm Aloneinfinland, this is EVE Online, and tonight we're going to be doing a little quiet talk about ganking again. So this is something that's problematic, and I've noticed it's ticked up in recent sort of times. I've seen a fair few sort of spikes on the kill boards. And for me, this kind of sums up the problem with EVE. Now, I'm not talking ganking in general, and I've just been ganked, and I'll get to that in a minute. This is one from a few days ago, and this is the one that annoys people, and this is the one that's toxic for EVE. Now, as you can see, I'm in a shuttle. I'm not carrying anything. I've not got at the time I think I had like 3 implants in. They're not even worth 20 million or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but it wasn't a clone that I considered like high implant level. However, your man popped us and then sent us the spiel from minor bumping, and this is without a doubt, in my opinion, the most toxic part of EVE. Now, this was the part that when the alpha accounts brought in, a whole load of people made these accounts and ganked a whole load of high sec people. Specifically, like, they were throwing money into it, real world money into it, to gank people, and just like spending their money to ruin somebody else's day. And yeah, it's kind of a young person's mentality. It's a bit of a pirate's mentality. It's not sort of thinking about the area that's going on, what's around about you. But what's not seen, what's not talked about, and when it is talked about, it is shouted down, usually with that bullshit fucking phrase of "this is EVE," which was a really cool video and has turned into the most toxic chant that you sort of get around this game. Is that when you're doing this, especially when you're doing this specifically, like going after shuttles, going after low term targets where there isn't a value there isn't any possibility of making money off of it, it is just to fuck with somebody's day. You also don't know what's going on at the other side of it, and this is a good example for me this evening. So I've just been ganked. It was like all sort of, I would say all my fault, from the fact that I was sat either at a gate or at a station. I'm not quite sure what had happened. I had warped to a gate, and then we had some family drama, some issues that needed dealt with, and some emergency services that needed called. And what I had done was I had hit dock. As far as I'm aware, I had hit dock and run off of the computer. So what I've returned to, and literally returned to it, is I'm gonna shut down the computer, and I literally see the red. Actually, the first thing I saw was these sort of streaming up, the kill rights earned as the attacks initiated, as I've got back to the computer, like the most provident timing you could get. It's just bling, oh my god, this is going on. And I couldn't, there was no attack, there was no damage to my shields before all of the kill rights came through, which is a little bit of an oddity on how the network is working. But I've immediately slammed on hardeners. I didn't actually register the area to see if I was outside the station or if I was still at the gate, but something's not happened with the EVE system, whether it's the command hasn't gone through to make me warp, or the command has stuck again and not docked me when it should have. I'm not sure if that's a thing. I just know that there is a constant problem with warping to gates when you hit the jump command, especially if an autopilot's involved, where it just doesn't autopilot you. But either way, I've ended up in my pod's been popped, which was actually the most shocking thing about this. I've got a set of mid-grade crystals that set me back a couple of billion years ago, because this is one of my oldest clones, and these are worth like 700 mil now. They were worth like 4 billion when I got them, so that's quite funny. And it's just, I'll just show it there, it's just gone through my ship that I had for the, for the Nexus. That's what I was heading towards to do before stuff went on. And as you can see, it's the same drill as usual. It's a whole load of catalysts that some have actually been popped. If you see that dual catalyst where the weapon is also the catalyst, that means it hadn't been killed by Concord by the time that it's gone through. And as you can see here, it's one or two companies. Yeah, Inner Hell and White Sky. So with all of these characters looking the exact same, I'm assuming it's one guy. Possibly two, with the two different companies involved. But it's just your typical group of gankers. Somebody out to ruin someone else's day. And fair play for this one, you can make money off of this. This is what I consider fair game when it comes to ganking. It sucks and it can cause a lot of problems and it can cause players to leave. However, my argument is that while it sucks, this is something that will happen. And it shouldn't be taken away from the people wanting to do it. And let me just check one thing when I clarify that. Minus 2.1 security status. I have no issue with this gank whatsoever. I have an issue with the fact that a command didn't go through, but that's a game issue, not a player interaction issue. What I massively dislike, what I think needs dealt with severely when it comes to CCP developing their game, is actually the gank before that with the shuttle. And I think this is a really good sort of way to put this, because of the fact that it's what's going on as opposed to losing something. Because normally when you get stuff, people are going, well, I am so upset because of all of this. They're rightfully upset. They're very angry. And to be honest, I'd probably be that angry if it wasn't for what I've just dealt with outside of EVE that's put everything in a lot of perspective. I would be raging. But if we look at this one, this is somebody who has got a minus 10 security status. I don't think they should be in high sec unless they have they have caused that in high sec and somehow haven't left. I don't think somebody with minus 10 security status should be able to dock, should be able to jump into high sec. I think if your security status goes below minus 5, you shouldn't have access to high sec at all, because that's somebody who doesn't need to put any effort in. You can go pirate, you can use something that can pop ships, so Catalyst or Thrasher, and you can just jump into the high sec system and pop. I don't think that should be allowed, because if you're talking game lore, why the hell would people allow you through the gate if you are that bad a person? If you can immediately be targeted, surely Concord would do the thing, or they would block you from coming through, because that is within the lore, blocking gates to having travel access. So this one here, I think, is the one that needs addressed, because, and I'm not saying ban a person like permanently or stuff like that, I'm saying that the security status needs fixed before you can come back to high sec and gank again. So that way, if you do a gank or 2 ganks or 3 ganks, then your security status drops low enough that you have to do a bit of grinding and you have to actually work for it in game, as opposed to, let's buy a new ship, let's pay real world money, get somebody else to do the farming, because remember, everything that somebody's paying real world money for, someone else is doing in game. It's not a case of buying it from CCP, it's a case of buying it from another player and paying CCP, which is, it is a difference, and one that helps fund the game. And I don't exactly have a problem with it. I think it's a fair way to continue funding the game, because there are people that have the ability to work at it and stuff like that. But I do think that this makes it far too easy, and that this should be adjusted, like a Law and Order adjustment. I do not think that ganking should come away from the game, and with it being the nature of the game, I think that that would also make the gankers have to put in the correct amount of effort for the game. Because if you are somebody who can just happy-go-lucky, wait until you see a target with your ult, pop in however many ships you want to be running on your computer, and pop all of those ships, and then, okay, that's me done. Well, don't you have to grind at something? No, I can just keep doing this over and over and over again. The security status can be nothing, and I can just keep going. No, that's not how it should work. That doesn't make sense lore-wise, and that's a pretty shitty way to run the game in general. If it's someone who's going to take a tanking on their security status, which you do when you go pirate, then that's fair play. And if we go back to the one that's just happened, you'll see that the security status tankings, oops, that's not the one there. There we go. So if we go back to this one and you go through them all, you can see that they're minus 2.1. Minus 2.1. So it looks like this was either their first or second gank. So these are all fresh accounts that have been brought in to do this. An employment history 2019, so that's somebody that's had the accounts for a few years. But as you can see, all with the exact same sort of drop. And all of the same thing, so all of the characters are the same person. And again, that's fair play. I would sort of argue with what's going on with that, especially because what surrounded that, because having everything come in on the exact same tick before I'd even seen it, that was weird. But this is something that I think CCP needs to address. Not this, but the other one, the people that have access when they have gone full pirate. This is fair game, and to be honest, with that level of sec status, and that's the other corporation, it's not going to take long to go out, as I've said before about grinding your security status, go out to Null-sec for a little while. You can even do it with the catalysts, bring them back up, but it means putting in a little bit of work, and that I think is a fair trade-off for what's going on. So I do think that something needs done about this, but my big loss just there was partially my fault. I'm still I'm thinking about whether to put it in for a repo, because I left the computer, but at the same time I gave the command, so I'm not quite sure. I think I'll just leave it, to be honest, because yeah, one of those things. But this, I wanted to sort of draw attention to this sort of thing, because I did actually make a video about this other one here, where it is. Because actually they did me a favour, because of where they killed me, they actually knocked me forward to my respawn point to where I was going. And as you can see, oh, where was the actual pod? It didn't cost me anything then, because it was a shuttle, and then it cost me, well, 118 mil, Jesus. That was not what I paid for those. But yeah, that's sort of nothing. And even this one, the pod that I just got lost, wasn't any of my high grade stuff. It was something that I take into Null with one of my shield fits. So it wasn't a big issue. It's not something big to replace. Well, it's just one of those annoyances. We all get them. The saying is, Aniv, do not fly it if you can't afford to replace it, and this is exactly why. High sec is not secure, it is safer space. But I still think some of that needs adjusting, and I do think that this is a good time to talk about it, specifically with what's going on, with more focus on the solos on the high sec areas, with CCP realising, especially more recently, with the mining update, that CCP's kind of going, holy shit, this is actually bringing some players back. Quite a lot back, quite a lot are interested. So that's the sort of thing. If you are somebody who's played Null-sec and who has played the large groups, and you get bored of that, there's nothing that really changes that. The biggest meta change for the Null-sec stuff when it comes to what players actually deal with en masse was the changing to jump physics over a decade ago. When they're talking about these new sovereignty mechanics, those sovereignty mechanics don't affect the day-to-day players. They only affect how the alliances structure their battles. But that's just a couple of people making decisions where they're going to fight. The FCs are the people above the FCs that are deciding where they're going to fight, who they're going to fight with, how it's going to run. But the biggest change was actually limiting the jump distance, limiting the distance that you can throw your weight. So that changed an awful lot, and there hasn't really been a change that big to Null-sec since. And when the Null guys get bored of that and take breaks from the game or leave the game, there hasn't really been a change that brings it back. It's like, oh, here's some new changes to sovereignty. Yeah, that doesn't affect how I sat with my 1,000 players waiting for the FC to say target A, target B, target C. That doesn't really change anything. And ship updates and things like that don't really change doctrines too much. But when it comes to this stuff, this is how you can get some players into the game or back to the game. Because the Null-sec it's sort of becoming self-contained, because new pilots aren't welcome without handing over their social security number in the name of their firstborn child. There's a lot of security around about that, and understandably so, but at the same time there's a lot of people that just don't want to do that. I saw a video the other day that was talking about it, how, well, this is justified, this is understandable. You're like, it's also still a game. If I wouldn't give that level of detail to my next door neighbour, why would I give it to somebody at the other side of the planet? I don't particularly like sharing my stuff. I don't even know why. I can't give you a decent justification for it. I don't particularly like doing it. I never did, but I was willing to do it because I was very interested in the cap swarm stuff, and I had a good laugh flying those and flying multiple clients. But these days it's not for me. I just like the game. I like bopping along on my own or with a couple of people, not in large groups, not being told you have to do this, you have to be here. These are things that side of the game isn't going to change. And if CCP can do it, that would be amazing, I think. But also, it's fighting a hell of a battle, because there's a lot of players that wouldn't want it changed. So it's picking your battles. But I think that the ganking mechanic, when it is not done for any level of profit, when it is done as pure harassment, that needs to change. I was talking about it earlier on to somebody in the comments. I think that one of the things that you need to have a look at is some more stuff for mining, because ironically a lot of people seem to enjoy that. But battleship size mining barges instead of the cruiser size. That's what the exhumers are sized as, cruisers. If you were to go battleship size and use something like a Bastion module to actually lock down the ships so that they can't be bumped off of belts, give them heavy tanking abilities, well, you can still pop them if you bring along enough gankers, but at the same time it would be a challenge for them. I think that's something that would be interesting. I've had a few attempts in my time against me when I've been in Marauders, and because I'm usually fitted not just to tank a high ability but also to have those extenders running, every time somebody's coming against one of my Marauders, it's something that's just out of the way. Everybody opens fire, the Marauder overheats, and it survives until Concord wipes the floor with them. If I'm lucky I can get a shot off, but without any modifications for targeting, usually I don't get the lock on before they're all wiped up by by Concord. So I thought I'd put this out there because I did make this video the other day and I didn't like how it sounded, because I am really angry about this, which is very funny to me. The fact that losing something that is 2.5 billion's worth doesn't cause me the same level of anger as losing a shuttle did. That to me is very funny, but it shows something that I've sort of wanted to communicate for a while, and I think this is a good way of doing it. So comments on any of that jazz, comments, opinions, all of that stuff below. Remember, these things are all being looked at by CCP. They are trying to expand, they are trying to develop, and I think there's a little bit of an eye-opening or a willingness to try other things going on at the moment. So we'll see what's going on, and I think it's a good time to put your comments, not just on my videos. If you see anybody making videos for the Eve crowd, have a look at them. I was very stunned when a couple of us were chatting in one of the Twitch streams and we were noticed. I've seen these videos. Wow, That feels an awful lot. That feels good. But at the same time, it shows that they are paying attention to this comment, especially, or even to smaller creators like myself, who are non-existent. And using the word creator feels dirty. I just don't like that. But yeah, put your comments down, put your opinion down on anybody's videos that are talking about these things in general. If you have an opinion, especially if you're somebody who is the more solo or the more small group focused, put your opinions down, because you're the one they need to read from. You're the one they need to hear about, because you're the one that's not represented by the CSM. You're the one that doesn't have much of a voice, and you happen to be the biggest group in the game. So the more opinions, the better. I know I'm not going to agree with them. You're not going to agree with my opinions. That's perfectly fine. CCP can take in all of the information and choose to do what they want with it. But they aren't going to choose to do your thing if they don't even know about it. So it's always good to speak up. But yeah. Now this little pod has to go AFK all the way back up north to go and replace this ship. I even had some shiny stuff in it. Look at that. But yeah, shit happens. It's one of those things. If it happens to you, try not to rage quit the game. It's fine to rage quit the session. It's fine to go and like spin out and things like that, but don't let these things get to you. It is a bit of a game. And it can feel more for some of us. Some of us it's almost like a second home. But it happens to all of us. Even the best of us have to do these things where we get caught off guard, we get ambushed, or look at how little damage I took. Jesus, that is not much at all. But I didn't have my hardeners on. That's my fault. But yeah, just those things. I wish I'd caught it on camera, but I wasn't planning on doing anything. But yeah, I just thought I'd show this. Good and the bad. It all has to be shown, and there is a point here, so. Thanks for watching, as per usual, down in the doobly-doo and all that jazz. For everybody, have a good night. Bye.